The reason I signed up was to just have more confidence in front of a group that when all the different things are happening. But one of the main benefits I took from it was not to say the first thing off the top of your head. So especially if you're trying to be funny or clever or even smart in a meeting, I notice you get an idea that pops in your head, but that's the one everybody will have. So I don't want to be the one that says the trite thing or let somebody else go first or say the thing that's on everybody's mind. So that's been a really
interesting,
a good bonus and something I've reflected on from improv.
In a corporate world where all employees have great leaders with no egos that create fun cultures where people can do their best work, the employees and companies thrive while doing great things for the customers, themselves, and each other.
Well, we know that rarely happens. I'm Jeff Palacio. I have been a leader for over 40 years for every t-shirt size company, from small 16 employees to extra large over 1 million. Please join me while I interview outstanding leaders that will share stories of great leadership and not so great. It will help you become a better leader while poking fun at all the crazy shit that happens in corporate America.
Hi, I'm Joe Deshawn, and welcome to the Corporate Couch with Jeff Palacio. Today's episode is brought to you by Palacio and Partners, providing turnkey podcast creation, hosting, production, promotion, and related creative resources for you and your business. Today, Jeff is interviewing Kelly Byrnes. Kelly is the founder and CEO of Voyage Consulting Group, helping leaders anticipate, assess, and address people-related challenges that threaten revenue, retention, and reputation. Her clients include healthcare, engineering, construction, architecture, marketing, science, technology, manufacturing, and financial services. In her most recent corporate role as Chief Talent Officer of a global science and tech firm, Ms. Byrnes reported to the CEO and global CHRO and led transformative efforts in culture, leadership, and performance. She was named one of the region's most influential women and was inducted into the Kansas City Business Hall of Fame. A global speaker, author, and contributor to 4 Amazon best-selling books. Her work has been included in the Harvard Business Review, the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, and more. You can learn more about Kelly at voyagecg.com. Let's listen as Jeff talks to Kelly.
Kelly, welcome to the Corporate Cast this Friday morning.
Thanks, Jeff. It's great to be here.
Yeah, we met recently through Fiona Lynn, who's a 4 foot 10 and a half, and under 100 pounds very easily, Dynamo. In Kansas City, via Salt Lake City, and via China, where she grew up. But love Fiona. I think she's fantastic. And then we also found that we have a mutual friend, Steve Taylor. So reached out to Steve, great person, and he's having some health issues. So I wish him well.
Yeah, 2 fantastic people from different eras of our life. We're so lucky.
Yeah, very lucky. So I think on LinkedIn we have like 188 mutual connections, and
oh, wow.
We had to have crossed paths somewhere. I don't know where, but there's so many, like your Tracy Hopper I saw, and Tracy Tracy and I were lucky enough to work together at Sprint PCS, and she's a great person, and I know I think you worked with her also. But we're gonna have a fun conversation. You have an unbelievable, fantastic career. You do so many things. Culture strategist, executive coach. You're doing an AI roundtable on LinkedIn. You're an author. And a teacher. At the executive MBA program at Rocker. So it's just going to be a great conversation. Let's start with something fun though. Kelly, you're very open out there on socials, on LinkedIn especially, and a very transparent person. But even people that know you fairly well, what one thing would surprise them about you?
Probably that I would get nervous for something like this. So we talked
Yeah,
a
which
little
is
bit.
hard to believe for me.
Yes, yes. Since I do
Yeah.
talk with people all the time, and I did improv, and I'm a speaker and all the things, but just having a one-on-one that's recorded, I don't know. I wish all of the listeners could be here right now. We could, all make
Yeah.
eye contact and all of that. So probably just that I have a little butterflies in my tummy right now.
Yeah, that is amazing. But let's talk. Well, that is surprising too. Let's talk about your improv career. I'll say. How did that all happen?
Yeah, it was pretty funny. I lived in Chicago, which is big for improv, and
Right,
one of my
Second
good friends,
City, and yeah.
yeah, one of my good friends, Kristen, took a program there, and she just loved it, and she was great, and she encouraged me to do it. So I took a program from the Players Workshop. Josephine Forsberg, she had spun off from Second City and had a training program, and I thought, well, that will help me
Well,
in
yeah, isn't
speaking.
she? She's the creator of improv, isn't she?
I think she is.
Yeah, I
Yes,
think
she's
she
passed away
is.
now, but yeah,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
why I know that, I don't know, but well, I
amazing.
think Joel Zeff, who I've had on the podcast, Joel is. I just sent you his speaker reel. He has an
I can't
8-minute
wait.
speaker reel, and not to be crass, but it is Friday. What the heck? And I am drinking coffee with Jameson in it right now. No,
Oh
kidding
my
about
God.
that, but no, I'm kidding about that, people. As Jason Bateman says on the Smartless podcast, to the one listener out there, I'm not drinking Jameson's in my coffee. But yeah, he was an improv. He started in the newspaper business, went to University of Kansas, started when the student section, when they announced the visiting team in the basketball games,
Hmm.
he started the tradition where they put the newspaper over their head and shake it. They pretend
Oh,
they're
okay.
not watching it, pretend they're reading. He started that tradition, and
Oh,
he
wow.
he loves improv, and he has a whole keynote. His keynote speech incorporate improv, and it's so funny. It's
Oh, that's
unbelievable.
awesome.
How has it helped you in your public speaking? And just, I mean, it must have been a while ago when you did that, but can you kind of reflect on that and how it's helped you?
Yes, it has been a while, but the reason I signed up was to just have more confidence in front of a group that when all the different things are happening. But one of the main benefits I took from it was not to say the first thing off the top of your head. So especially if you're trying to be funny or clever or even smart in a meeting, I notice you get an idea that pops in your head, but that's the one everybody will have. So I don't want to be the one that says the trite thing or let somebody else go first or say the thing that's on everybody's mind. So that's been a really
Interesting.
a good bonus and something I've reflected on from improv.
Yeah, that's very cool. Kelly, where did you grow up, and what was fun for you growing up?
I grew up here in Kansas City. My parents are from Chicago and Connecticut, so new to Kansas City back when I was a kid. And my dad worked for the Kansas City A's baseball team. That's what brought us to Kansas City. And then for the Spurs soccer team. So I remember being a little kid running around on the soccer fields. And so I grew up as a tomboy kid, and I also played Barbies. And I loved Barbies, but my Barbies were always the ones that held the weddings for the other people or built the store and ran so I always was doing business stuff, even as the little Barbie playing kid. So my dad had a business in our home, worked from home back in the day, and
Wow.
I answered his phone. And so I love business since I was a little kid.
Yeah. Did he work for any like New York sports teams, being from Connecticut, or?
No, he moved here after college. He went to Notre Dame, and Charlie Finley had a home near there, and he kind of stalked that guy to get a job, and
Wow.
marketing and PR, and came to Kansas City to work for him, and then worked for him for a few years, and then stayed in Kansas City when he moved on.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah,
Fantastic. Yeah, it's fantastic. So, did you have like an older or younger brother that tortured your Barbies too, or?
yeah. Not really. They didn't torture. I have one older brother and two younger brothers. And so, but they didn't torture my Barbies. I think my parents had a handle on that. I got to be a girl in a household with all these boys. So
Yeah,
they were pretty good.
there you go.
Yeah.
And when you were like 10 years old, did you have any aspirations? Like, when I grow up, I'm going to do this. What was that for you?
Yeah, would visit my dad's family in Connecticut every summer, and his brothers were lawyers, and I used to go to their office, and I loved going there. And I remember sitting in my godfather, Uncle Tom, into his office reading law books. And so when I got back to Kansas City, I remember being a kid reading business books and law books and things like that, looking for cases and being interested in that. So I thought I would go to law school. My older brother did go to law school. But then when I was in undergrad, I really liked business, and I was just excited to get a job, and I wanted to pursue business. So I got a job with a division of Sprint in Kansas City, and then got my MBA at Rockhurst while I was working at Sprint.
Get that paid for? That was as long as you had a C and above, based
Yes,
on
it
my
was.
experience there.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Was it always a business major from freshman year to graduation? Because but you also had a history major. So what was the background to that?
Yeah, I was a history major because at the beginning I thought I'd go to law school, and I was really interested in history. And I was undeclared when I went in, but I fell in love with one of the history teachers. This American history professor was the kind that you would expect. Like, he seemed old at the time, and he was probably 40 or something, but he was so inspirational to me. And so that he inspired me to become a history major. And then I was a business minor, and I did a lot with the different business clubs and all. And funny, after I graduated from undergrad, and a few years later, and I was doing speaking, and I bought a briefcase, for a really nice leather briefcase for that professor. And I sent it to him because his was old and literally had rubber bands around it.
Oh,
geez. And so I sent him this briefcase because he used to tell me when I was in undergrad that I was going to grow up and be a speaker. And I never thought that was going to happen, but I did. And so I sent him a briefcase. He would tell me he would be the guy to carry my briefcase around. That's what he was going to do for me when I was a speaker.
Oh my God.
So I sent him a briefcase.
My family, my brother, my sister-in-law, one of my cousins, they were all teachers. It's just a great profession. And you always remember great teachers, whether it was grade school, middle, junior high school, or college. I mean, they're life-changing, really. I mean, that professor gave you a gift. What spurred the interest in history? Because I also liked history growing up. I loved reading about the George Washington and Abraham, all the heroes, and all that. But what spurred your interest?
When the way he taught was he would teach the variety of American history in segments, of course, like they all. But then the tests were blue books. And he'd just have a stack of blue books. You go up and get the notebook that people don't know today. But and he would just ask 2 or 3 questions up on a board, and you pick if there were 3 up there, you answer 2, and you just write it all out in the blue book. What I liked about that was the integration of all the things happening at the same time. The World War I Museum in Kansas City does a great job of that too, where they'll have, this is what was happening in the war during those years. Here's what was happening in sports. Here's what's happening in entertainment. But you can see it all together, and I really liked that. So that's what prompted my interest.
You're at St. Mary's College, graduate, and you went right to Sprint. How did you get that job?
Through networking, through introductions from people. So networking right away launched my career. And I started as the lowest level employee that they had.
Wow. What were you doing there?
I was hired into the division that published the phone book, and I was hired on the publishing side. So they were starting to create the publishing. They had the marketing and operations, but they were outsourcing the publishing. So I joined the publishing team. I was the 4th one on that team. I think the 33rd employee in the company. And so, when you're that small and there's all this opportunity, I did a lot of different things. And I was, a couple others were the same stage of career, but I got to do a lot of cool things because I was eager to take on things, and I said yes and tried, and I got my hand slapped a lot too and made mistakes, but I had a lot of fun back then.
Yeah. How long did your Sprint career last?
About 6 years, I think, 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Over 5 years, I know.
Yeah. And talk about, like, you eventually, I mean, you become a chief talent officer, you're in the HR space. I think you work for a Chicago agency where you did a lot of kind of culture building and all that. So talk about how kind of working in the publishing industry with the, phone book and yellow pages and all that good stuff that most probably no Gen Zers ever heard about. But talk about how you transition and who were some of your mentors at the time.
Yeah, I had great mentors early on, and people took me under their wing, from the boss that I had at Sprint, and then the printing company was R.R. Donnelly, and I'm still in touch with some of those folks. But they took me under their wing, and they taught me nuances of business and of management and leadership, and it wasn't about the technical skills all the time. They really gave me a lot of good insight, and the feedback was crucial, and I just ate it up. And so I think they saw that they could influence and inspire me, and so they continued that, and that's what prompted my career, really, because I moved in that same organization from the publishing or the operations side. I moved to marketing and then to strategic planning as well. And so my career has been spent in these different areas. And in that division, we set up companies. So I got to be an intrapreneur inside. That's what Steve Taylor and I did together. So he was on strategic planning and did a lot of cool new business things. And so I got to explore all of that and participate in that early on.
Yeah, Sprint, having spent about 10 years there myself, I think had an unbelievable training program. We had the University of Excellence, and we did total quality management initiative where people, we looked at things and process improvement. And I took so many tools from that learning and used them throughout my career and still do, as well as I did a 5-day Stephen Covey 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It was just fantastic. I mean,
yes,
7 hours of a day
yes,
for
same.
5 days. Maybe Friday was half a day, but whatever. It was fantastic, and that got me into Stephen Covey and his thinking. I went to a seminar, took my direct reports to principle-centered leadership in Chicago.
Oh,
Actually,
awesome.
it was Tracy Hopper.
Oh.
It was me and three women that reported to me: Amy Noker, Maggie Marshall, Tracy Hopper. So we deemed it Charlie. I was Charlie, and they were Charlie's Angels. And they did that. I didn't. I'm not.
Oh, I'm sure.
Don't judge me, people. But we had fun. They were great people. That
and I know Tracy
Maggie,
so well.
still friends
totally
today, and we had a great time building Sprint PCS. Which I
got to do some of the cool projects there, like the phone card, the first phone card.
Wow!
They put a committee together, and I got picked to be on this, like maybe 10 people, and in conference rooms talking about it before it was created, and talking about the customer and the potential, and that was pretty fun. That was a highlight too.
Yeah, phone card for you people out there that have no idea is when we had landline phones that had wires, or you were going to pay phones, you can pop in a 14-digit number and talk cheaper than putting $18 of quarters.
Yes.
In a pay phone. Or it was cheaper than the hotel rates, because hotels would charge you, out the ass for long distance calls.
It's funny to think about how the technology back then, and landlines, and like, oh my God, how old are these people or whatever? But we were on the ground floor of amazing technology growth, and I ate it up. I loved it. I was an early adapter, even to the internet. I remember learning from another Sprint colleague at the time. David Burrows was the first one I ever knew that had access to it. And I stayed after work all the time, and he'd show me things that he was going to, and it was mostly company web pages, and people didn't even have email yet. But I loved all of that. So I feel grateful to have been in on the ground floor to these technology developments, and then it makes me more eager to learn now, and that's why I'm into AI and not afraid of it, and not intimidated by it or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about career management and earlier before we you teach a class at Rockhurst University about strategic career management, but we were blessed that we worked, and telecom in the late 80s into the 2000s was one of the places to be. It was
Yeah.
like being in the Coke Pepsi battles,
Yeah.
in beverage industry. But we had, AT&T, Sprint, MCI. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, and we worked very hard, and we used to joke around like 1 year at Sprint is like 3 years at another company because
Yes.
of the fast pace. So we did so many things and moved fast. I mean, I went from IT to marketing at Sprint, and there was my first year there in the marketing organization, marketing advertising. We didn't even have a budget. Like there was no
Wow.
approved budget. We were just spending money. I mean, it was crazy. But we were
Wow.
using celebrities like Candice Bergen,
Oh,
was
yeah.
their spokesperson, and
Love her.
she was so hot in terms of meaning
Murphy Brown.
popularity. She was very attractive also, but
Yes.
and she was doing one of the best shows at the time in the 90s.
Yeah.
Murphy Brown, very famous show, won a lot of Emmys. So yeah, it was just a proving ground, and
Yeah.
very fun times. So what made you leave Sprint? You were doing so well there, had a lot of opportunity, learning a lot, had great mentors. What was the kind of catalyst to move on?
Yeah, I think I got to a point where the moving things kind of started to slow down a little bit, and had some conversations with my manager, and I just kind of settling into a routine, and that throughout my career, that wasn't really the best thing for me. So I left there, and I had been recruited and strong referral to join the American Management Association. So I wanted to do the training and development full time. And so that's where I learned the speaking and the training and adult learning, and moving on to AMA, which was called Paget Thompson in Kansas City at the time.
Oh,
So
right. Yeah, sure.
yeah. Then AMA bought them. But that was great training ground for a lot that I do now. And writing trainings was different than delivering. So you're hired first to deliver, I was. And then, but they give you a lot of feedback, and they only send the best out. So it was a great training ground as well. So moving from one to the next was kind of owning my career and being kind of recognizing when it wasn't the best thing for me anymore, or it wasn't. Right. I wasn't making the roads that I wanted to, and have the conversations before it comes to an end.
It's so interesting, and I don't know if this happened to you, but like I'm a loyalist by one my best friend or one of my best friends. We've been friends since elementary school. The same person cuts my hair since I moved to Kansas City, type thing. And that was a while back. But today, if you move jobs every year or 2 years, it's totally fine. But I was called a job hopper.
Mm-hmm.
I only had one voluntary job move. I went from AT&T to Sprint, and my 9 other transitions were involuntary. I would go to a division, shit would happen. The company would fold. I went to Sprint Business Marketing from consumer long distance, and we're headquartered in Kansas City, and then the president of Sprint Business did not like Kansas City. I mean, this is unofficial. And we moved to Dallas, and that's how our friend Steve Taylor moved to Dallas. I did not want to move to Dallas. Nothing against Dallas. I just wasn't a good personal move for me with family and things like that. But it was crazy. And then that was a catalyst for me to recognize, like no job is safe. And this is like 1994, 1995. I went to Bayer Crop Science. So Bayer had been here since 1958, headquarters, and the plant's still here and all this. They bought Aventis Crop Science instead of everybody from Aventis moving to Kansas City. There was a big battle between Raleigh, North Carolina's economic development organization, and Kansas City's, and Raleigh won. Raleigh's beautiful. It's all good. But, like things like that. So, they've been here 50 years, and they get up and go. I was at Capital One, and 326 people of the building here, and the 2008 recession hit. They closed the whole thing down. It was in the mortgage industry, so that was probably why. It's just interesting.
Have you reflected on the impact you've had on these companies, and what is your part?
Shit would happen. Short the stock when I go to a company. That was a learning. I made millions by doing that, by the way.
Well, funny, I reflected recently about my journey, and not quite the same as you, but almost. And my exits were, I recognized the need to go and started having those conversations with my boss. And then they I think in all three, the organizations that I left were like, and then they came to me and said, yeah, we need to figure this out, so kind of mutual, but I had initiated those conversations recognizing that I needed to go.
Kelly, I have not asked this question in a very long time for one of my guests, but I'm going to ask you because I think you'll have hopefully a fun answer. No names, please, unless you want to, but what was the characteristics of the worst boss you ever had?
I would say self-centeredness. They were the worst bosses I had were only focused on what they wanted out of the job. They were leaders of the companies and they didn't really care about other people or what. They came across as super nice people. They're very easygoing, but they made decisions that were only to benefit them. Like a new vacation policy. If you've been here this long, you get this much more. Oh, it just happens to be that's how long they've been there. They didn't implement that 3 years ago when it was recommended, but they'll do it now because it's, or, just different things that I can look back and see that they made decisions that only affected them. And then self-centeredness where they didn't want to have hard conversations. So they would let like the worst, most toxic people continue doing what they were doing. And they wouldn't have a hard conversation or let them go. So I would say being self-centered.
Yeah. Any delusional type characteristics?
I can look back and recognize they weren't my bosses, but I do recognize some where some people think the title gives them all the power. And so ego can run away when you get a certain title. Yes. And, certainly there's people that we know like that today, but they learn pretty quickly that that level of power only goes so far.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I had never thought about this before, but I had one boss and the person's delusional. And I never really said that about any boss. And then I'm a big Ryan Holiday fan, and he wrote one of his great books is Ego's the Enemy. And he talks about people with big egos are sometimes delusional. And I'm like, oh my God, yes. I mean, it's
yes. Well, and I can think about times where there were some that had these delusions of opening a new market or creating a certain product, and they just knew that that'd be, but the rest of us are saying, no, we need to do these things first, or that won't work, but they won't listen because they're not in touch. And I do think it's common as an executive coach now. I work with executives at the senior level, and they do lose touch naturally as they have different conversations. They're having external conversations, so they lose touch with internal. So they're pretty good people, but they can lose touch sometimes. So
yeah, power corrupts, right? It looks like in 2002 you started your own training company, and talk about that journey, because was that your first kind of foray into kind of a non-W2 role, and was that a side gig? I mean, it looked like you had it for about 14 years. Talk about having your own company.
Yeah, I started that after 9/11. So I had moved to Chicago and was working in the advertising industry and marketing. And so this was another one. I went to the management team. I reported to the CEO or the president, whatever their title. And, after 9/11, the ad agency, Ad World, was hit hard, as you might remember from marketing and all. And so I went to them and I was over HR, and I really liked the training and development aspect. And I could see that companies still needed that. So I pitched to them that I would exit and create my own company. And so that I was part of an exit there where they called a whole bunch of us into a room and announced it there. And then if you're in this room, you're leaving. If you're in that room, stay in here while they go.
So personal.
Right. That was not great. And that was a great company that did a lot of cool culture things, but that part wasn't as great.
Are you drowning in boring corporate communications? Palacio and Partners is here to rescue you. We transform internal podcasts from snooze fest to must-listen content that actually connects your team and strengthens your culture. Imagine podcast episodes that make your employees laugh while staying informed. Our founder, Jeff Palacio, doesn't just create podcasts. He creates conversations that break through the noise. Whether you're a growing startup or a massive corporation, we turn your company's story into audio gold. Leadership becomes human. Remote teams feel connected. Your message cuts through the clutter. Palacio and Partners, where corporate communications gets a fun makeover. Let's make your podcast work harder than your email inbox ever could. Jeff is happy to share his insights on podcasting with you. You can contact him via LinkedIn or schedule a Zoom call via the link in the episode description.
Even though I had pitched the idea. So then I took a bit of a sabbatical and I talked with some companies about joining, and it just never felt quite right. Some of those interviews were sure interesting, but I decided, I'm going to launch my own thing. And I reached back out to them, and right away they signed up, and they had me go train one of their clients and work with one of theirs. And that's been a real foray to launch all my organizations and my confidence in doing my own thing, because I had a different take on.
Yeah, so it was nice. So you got, you got some clients right off the bat, which is
Right.
really the hardest thing to do. What was kind of the big surprise when you had your own company? You don't have the security anymore of a paycheck and benefits and all that good stuff.
I lived below my means, so that was a very smart thing. I would highly recommend to all young up and comers, well, anybody really. So I wasn't as afraid of the financials. I mean, I put a deadline. If I didn't have any clients by 6 months, I needed to make a decision, because this wasn't going to be my hobby. I needed income. But one thing that surprised me was the word of mouth, and that really did make a difference. And I didn't really know how to work that or how to capitalize on that, or I just kind of let it happen. And I think I could have done a better job of that.
Yeah. And then at some point, because it looked like it was about a 14-year period, at some point were you doing both at your own company and being a W-2? I know you were the chief talent officer at MRI Global from the 2012 through 16 range, but talk about that. Was it a side gig at some point?
Yeah, they were a client for a long time. And then I think they had an exit of somebody, and so asked me to come on, and I didn't want to take a full time, and I had other clients. So I joined them as, I think it was 50% of my time at first. And then just got more involved and not taking on new clients. So I turned my other couple clients over to a colleague, and then I joined them full time.
Okay. And then what made you go out again on your own to start Voyage Consulting Group?
I set up what I could set up there regarding leadership and culture and employee experience things. And it was time to go again. And so an exit happened, and I right away, within a few months, created my own thing. And I did look around. I talked with other companies about joining. I don't remember now what the decisions were on why I didn't, but it just really felt good to be able to pick the people that I'd work with again, and be able to pivot and focus on the things I wanted to focus on, which are culture and leadership. And I still do that today.
Where did this love of culture come from, and being an executive coach? I mean, obviously you were doing L&D type things and training, but where do you think that kind of love and passion came from?
I could see a difference that how we were treated made in my team at Sprint. So the little group that we had, 7 or 8 of us, our boss treated us in a certain way that aligned with all the research that comes out now, but differently than other teams. So I could just see how that all worked. And the company was really, our division was really energized. And people today, we're still in touch today. Those people from all those years ago, publishing the phone book, but it really wasn't about the phone book.
Right.
It was about all the things that were happening. And so then at the ad agency in Chicago was the same. And were scaling up when I joined. They had a pool table, ping pong table, free coffee, all you wanted, and all the time, and lunches all the time. And then you didn't mind working late. One of the things there, I lived in my condo was around the corner, right downtown from the agency I worked at there. And the creative team was putting a pitch together, and they're working overnight. So I made cookies and made chocolate chip cookies, and I brought the cookies over, and they were still warm because I lived close enough that when I walked over at 2 a.m, this was 2 a.m, and they were working, and they that's what you did. And so I saw all that work, and I saw when you really care about people, how much it makes a difference. And my career with all of this started before all the research is out now. And when I started doing this work 20 years ago and would explain, senior team would ask me well, what does culture mean? What are you talking about? And they didn't have any idea. And now people generally have an idea of what it is. But,
Yeah, they have an idea, I think, but they don't sometimes know what to do.
Right.
Which sounds crazy to me because I'm like you. I mean, culture. I'd love to build great cultures within companies. Kind of prided myself on doing that, whether it was just my team culture or part of a larger organization. And it's so important. I mean, you spend so much time working. If you can't make it fun and help people get where they want to be and
Right.
and do great things together, right? I mean, and yeah, sometimes it sucks and sometimes you're going to do stuff you don't want to do, but that's just, especially if you're a publicly traded company,
Right.
and if you're a small company and publicly traded, you're doing so much shit to prepare for a board meeting or a 10Q and all, it's crazy, but
Yeah.
it happens.
But that's a good example even of the board meeting. In one of my corporate roles, the CEO, the leadership team would spend so much time. And I remember saying to the CEO who I coached, and I said, I don't think the board would be happy to know how much time you spend on slot for their meeting. Like,
oh my God. There was a small, I worked for Arizona Therapeutics. We were publicly traded on NASDAQ. I mean, marketing and sales would have like 30 minutes. And I swear we put in between everyone over 100 man hours.
I mean, ridiculous.
Easily for, data, because they want to be prepared for every question that could be possible.
Right.
But
they spend
I don't know,
time
100 man hours, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're a small
this
company.
slide over here. Yeah, you don't need to focus on that. Focus on the answers. Another thing was focus on going forward. So a thing I changed back in one of the companies that I worked with was the strategic planning. Every quarter, they'd fly all the leaders in and for a 3 or 4 day boondoggle, and they're all at hotels. It was expensive, but the meetings were everyone had an hour to present on last quarter. Like, send us all that in an email. We can look at a 1-pager, summarize it. We don't need to know everything. We don't need 30 slides on that. Let's focus on what do you see coming up and what challenges are there and what are the opportunities. And so just switching that gear made a big difference there.
I know you've been teaching. You were at UMKC for a while, University of Missouri in Kansas City, and you do the executive MBA program at Rockhurst University currently. Talk about how you're seeing, I think you started at UMKC in 2008 and your current with the executive MBA program at Rockhurst. Talk about kind of the changes as you see in the students and kind of how that has impacted how you teach them.
Yeah, that has been interesting. I joined UMKC with an invitation from the dean at the time, and the associate dean were fantastic. So that was a great entry into academia. And then met the dean of the Rockhurst Business School. And she looked at, here's a social media bonus, but she looked at my LinkedIn profile. So we had been connected, but I sent her a note and I said, hey, LinkedIn advised you looked at my profile. If there's something I can do for you or Rockhurst, I'll jump at the chance. So we had coffee and she asked if I would consider being an adjunct. And I said yes, and I acted all professional. But then when I got to my car, I cried because I went to Rockhurst. So I was home. I was happy to come to Rockhurst. Yeah. So I've been teaching in the regular MBA since, and then the EMBA just the last couple of years. But one thing I've noticed, the resistance to technology from the education, the academic side, but the students are really absorb it. And so I teach now, there's some classes I do asynchronous. So every week I post a video, and I don't know if everyone who teaches asynchronously does, but I post a video and some discussion questions where they can talk with each other. And sometimes I pop in there, but I found that to be a little bit too time consuming. And then I had feedback. I didn't comment to everyone. So I make those where they can talk to each other, but the video, and then people will email me. So I think just bringing the personal element in through the video, through whatever technology you can. The students will text. I reply to them faster than anybody else during those 8 weeks in emails and texts. And so I think the change in the use of tech, but then they still want the personal aspect. And the students today are, they give me hope for the future. So, you hear about these Gen Zs and the alphas coming up, and they're so different and all of that. But frankly, I remember being out of undergrad, and I remember the older employees making fun of me for working so hard and for, not understanding how business worked. And I remember wanting a promotion, and I'd been there 5 minutes, and,
Yeah.
they called me the young
Yeah,
whippersnapper.
a lot of it was based on seniority, not performance.
Right. But I remember being called those things, and
Yeah.
so people call these young people now these similar things, and they're not
Yeah.
all like that.
Yeah.
A lot of these people, the ones that come to Rockers that I work with, they have their head on right. They have good hearts, and they're smart. So they're looking for ways to mix all of that together and have a great life that matters.
Right. I know you wrote one of your books. It was published in February, I think, of this year, 2025, The Basics of Gen AI. So talk about, the use of AI. I mean, because so like you can summarize it. You don't even have to read a book anymore. You can just have AI summarize a book. But talk about how, you're kind of an expert in the AI space, if anyone is an expert, but you do AI roundtables on LinkedIn, and I know you have a bunch of certifications in it. So talk about that process.
Yeah, I got on board when another colleague was did a presentation about it. I was curious, and reading wasn't helping. So when he showed on his screen what he did, I was in right then. So similar to the internet all those years ago with that guy, I recognized the fear and hesitation that I had, and then the quick benefits of it. And so I just kind of paid attention to that. And I'd have conversations with leaders, about their culture and their leadership and all the things. And I'd ask about AI, and, oh no, we're not using that. We can't put our customer data in there. But there's 80 billion other things you can do besides putting your customer data in there. So I wanted to just give them reinforcement that somebody who gets them understands and also can help them get on board with it. I started working with people, speaking about it, just sharing some basics the way the one guy shared with me. And Brad Simmons is his name. Shout out to Brad. And then I just decided so many questions were coming up, I'll just write a little book about it.
So, and as an instructor, adjunct professor, how do you what kind of boundaries are there? Because obviously AI is done, you want employees to use AI to make their lives easier, right?
Right.
So, what's the current standard with students in that aspect?
I do have that in my syllabus. I have an AI policy, and I tell them that I use it all the time. So I'm probably going to recognize if you just copy and paste from ChatGPT or something. AI is good for an overview. It's good for some things, but if you don't really know what it's talking about, you can't have a conversation about it. So, and I think of that for leadership. For what the work I do, I can have ChatGPT outline an agenda for a meeting. But then when the client asks me, well, what have you noticed that's changing about culture? If I don't have examples and I don't have my own opinion about that,
right.
I think they can tell that you just you just AI that and don't really know what you're talking about. So critical thinking and having some experience is key. But then I get around it as a professor by asking them questions about whatever that project is.
At University of Kansas, I did an undergraduate business class in sales leadership in the spring 2023 semester. I had a full-time professor kind of mentoring me. He was teaching the same course, and I just said, I was just amazed at the lack of participation. I really had to, pull stuff out of him, but he gave me a good, and then people who were, they would not, the students would say, yeah, I'm, basically I need a mental health day. My anxiety level is so high. And he told me that it's because of COVID, they were secluded. They came up through COVID, and, they became more, not socially inept, but, their social skills weren't as strong. I would love your thoughts on that, since you teach it full time.
I teach part-time. So
part-time, but
I do teach part-time.
You teach probably every semester.
I do teach all year long, but part-time.
Yeah.
I used to consider that kind of my community service work, and would do it all at night. But now I don't want to work till midnight every night anymore. But it is true. And I hope that generation that graduated high school and undergrad during the COVID years would just recognize that they need some help with social skills, and that's okay. Yeah. And they're the ones that don't want to go to work. But I had great experiences in the workplace. And I think there can be too much pressure on families to be too responsible for your happiness if you're around your family all the time and that's all you do.
Right.
Even as a grown, somebody in their 40s, your spouse doesn't really want to be around you all the time, and neither do your kids, as much as they love you. Like, it's great to have another aspect to your life, and work can be amazing. Don't buy into the hype that it has to suck every day for 30 years or whatever. Work can be a positive, great experience. But yeah, I do see that social anxiety, and I wish they just admit that they need to learn some of those skills and then take the steps to learn those. That would serve them well.
Yeah. No, I think that's great advice.
Mhm.
Talk a little bit more about your current company, Voyage Consulting Group. Like, who are some of the people you love to serve and help? I know it's, executive culture, building, strategy, culture from the inside out, but talk about your process and how you help clients and companies.
Yeah, a lot of companies bring me in to do a culture assessment at the beginning. And I just worked out a process. I call it a 3-week sprint. So in 3 weeks, they can get a better understanding of their culture. And it's digging below the surface, because what's underneath is what drives what's on top. And it's hard to get what's underneath when you're inside. And so it's really good to come in and excavate. And I do the intake is from a variety of different sources and different ways, and then I call it a YCB, a Your Culture Brief. And I don't give the data. I make them pinky swear they're not going to ask me for a data at the end. The employees think that the bosses are going to look at the data and try to figure out who said what.
Right.
I'm like, that's not the point of this.
Right.
So companies that are that have a new leader, they're making big changes, maybe merger acquisition coming up, or that they're stuck. That they're not hitting their numbers. There could be some internal silos or strife, and but something's not working, and so they need to figure out what that is and why. And you can buy new technology all day long, and that's a lot of them have, and then that hasn't helped.
Right.
So it comes down to the people. So the people are our focus on the people, things that impact revenue, retention, and reputation.
What's like the typical client profile? Is it a C-suite executives that know they need a great culture, don't know how to do it, or is it they have a decent culture but they want a better
Mhm.
one? What type of client?
Yeah, most of them, both of that. They have a decent culture. They know about it. They've done the best that they can, but they've been studying engineering or architecture for 30 years. They haven't been studying people the same way. They're not research in that area. They're out with clients. They don't have as much time to dedicate to bringing cookies over to the office at 2 a.m. They're not doing things like that. They don't have time. And so they have an idea of it and a vision. I work with great leaders. I would say I'm not a turnaround, a fix-it person if the leadership is terrible, because I just don't want to work with those people.
Yeah.
Back when I started this 20 years ago, if I had to explain why you need to care about your people, that's not a fit for me.
Right.
So some financial companies were like that back then. And now all of a sudden, you see some of the CEOs from the big firms are getting on board with, oh, I should care about them.
Right.
Like, yeah, it turns out they make a difference. So
Yeah.
they usually get to a frustration point where they've done the best they can, and they're just fed up. They're losing sleep over it. They're exhausted.
Yeah.
And, I just know different things. If I need engineering, I would go to them. I don't know about engineering, or lawn care, landscaping. I know a little bit about it, but I don't know enough to do a great job at it by myself.
Right.
No.
Yeah. You basically have had this company for about nine plus years. Where do you see Voyage Consulting Group going in the future?
Yeah, I called it Voyage Consulting Group. So the group can be 1099s. So at the time that I started it, I didn't want to have full-time people.
Sure.
So that affects the pricing, because I don't have to pay people to be on the bench. And we also are virtual around the country, and actually even globally. So I think in the future, I would be looking forward to taking on more bigger projects where I could include more people. There's a lot of other great experts out there that aren't so great at marketing or business development, but they can solve one specific type of problem. Yeah. And so I can bring them in under my umbrella when I have that type of a project.
Yeah,
so I have a couple of those right now, and are in the works. And that's an honor to help with them, but also to know who to bring in to solve a specific issue that a client has.
Yeah. Yeah. And we talked about it offline, but, I'm a kind of late stage baby boomer, that thinks probably like a Gen X at times, but I think as a baby
stage boomer, early Gen Xer, right?
There you go. And I think about 12,000 people a day in the U.S. turn 65, right? And that used to be the age, but I think there's a lot of baby boomers, and I think this will bode for the future generations possibly too, that they don't want to stop working. They feel like, we're not like factory workers where, you work for 30 years or 35 years, 40 years, and, your body couldn't take it anymore. You got injuries, but, we use our brain to, not that they didn't, but, we're not doing manual labor or tedious work. Even dental hygienists have a hard time because they're always bent over. And, I think the fractional work, like you're talking about, because there's so many great people out there that left their job as a CMO or CEO or some kind of executive or even managerial level, where they still want to contribute and add value to companies and people, but don't want to be in a W-2. They want more flexibility, kind of a lifestyle job. And I think it's a brilliant strategy. And I think there's a ton of talent out there to, help you.
Yeah, there really is. And it's brilliant that the companies are on board with that now.
Yeah.
That companies are open to different types of employee arrangements. The hours are shared jobs and things like that.
Yeah.
But I'm not ready to slow down, or, I keep my eye on the market and see what people need and what companies are buying and try to bring that forth. So it doesn't have to be so hard, but I like that. I like writing and providing resources that help people.
Yeah.
So
you do a lot of it. You're like a Renaissance woman. You got so many things going on. I love it.
Me too.
Yeah. Well, Kelly, you talked about your own experience getting your first job, and I think it was networking. But I love helping two groups of people. One's that recent college graduate who got the degree now, and now is like, oh, I need a job. And so talk about what advice you have for them to get that first job, as well as, begin their career, post-college career journey.
Yes. So I would say networking today is even better than it was way back then. But networking, take initiative for that. And even though I was introduced to somebody early on, I didn't know I should be the one driving that relationship. So when you're young out of school, and what you have to offer is your attitude and your demeanor, and bring, that companies are hiring for that when you're young, and actually anytime. But take it. Start with networking, and then keep in touch with those people. Keep in touch with them. Email them regularly. Not every day or every week even, but form a little list of who you're keeping in touch with. And and I have a tool if they need help to track all of that. So I had created a job search program based on what that mentor right out of undergrad shared with me back then. I expanded that and made it a digital. Well, it's kind of digital, but a tool for people. So if they want to have access to that, I'd be glad to give it to them. And a series of spreadsheets really is what it is. But keep track of your network at the beginning so you can keep in touch. You can congratulate them. Look for ways to be of service, of sending thank you notes. Those are not outdated. Don't believe the hype. Sending notes and showing the type of person that you are. So take the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I do a 6-week course for recent college graduates on helping them get jobs. And I say, it's all about separating yourself, right? You want to be authentic and you control the process more than you think, because you can pick companies and network into them. But thank you notes go a long way, handwritten. And I love that advice.
One thing I talk about sometimes in that strategic career management class at Rockhurst, this is with MBAs, and I think it's a required class. When I first started teaching it, it was one of only 2 or 3 schools in the country that had a class like that.
Yeah.
And but one of the things I share in there is to, it's really not all that hard to distinguish yourself these days. So whether you're brand new or you've been working for 10 or 20 years, the fact is most people settle for mediocrity. And if you're not one that does that, and you can be of service in that way, let that out, be true to yourself.
Yeah, it's amazing the number of interview ease that don't come with a list of questions. Like it's, I mean, it's crazy, but just write, questions. And I always say, and Google the company right before you go into the interview, just in case something crazy happened that morning.
Right. Absolutely.
So you know.
Absolutely.
You never know.
Yeah.
Kelly, as you know, everyone can be a leader at a company. You don't have to have direct reports or a team or teams under you. But the people that want to take that career path and become first-time managers, or they're responsible for a team of people, what advice do you have for them as they begin that leadership journey?
I would say be a leader. And being a leader means, are you doing things that influence people to want to follow you? And that's not by force. It's by they happily want to follow along with whatever you're saying, whatever your idea is, join your team. So don't wait until you have a project to be a leader or until there's some kind of official capacity. Inside an organization, you can volunteer to be on the committee that's planning the summer gathering or the holiday party. Volunteer for the annual nonprofit charity giving campaigns, and volunteer at your local church for different committees like that. So you're learning leadership of a group and influence in that way. But work on being influential more than you work on a title. And look, if nobody's back there, you're not a leader. So whatever your title is.
Right. Yeah.
Or if you're only paying people to be back there.
Right. Now, I love that. Kelly, thanks so much for coming on the Corporate Couch with me this beautiful Friday morning in Kansas City. You're such a pleasure to talk to, and I'm so glad that Fiona introduced us.
Me too. Thank you so much, Jeff. Yeah, it was fun having coffee with you, and it was fun catching up today. Thank you so much. Best wishes to you and all your people.
So enjoyed Kelly. I cannot believe we were not at a meeting together or a Sprint happy hour back in the day, because we were there around the same time at Sprint. We have a lot of mutual friends. I think she was an employee 33 in the Sprint publishing division. Talk about old school,
Talking about
published telephone books. And what about this? We had the great Joel Zeff, the keynote speaker, who does everything via improv, basically, or not everything, but the basis of his keynotes are improv, and they're funnier than shit. And Kelly studied in Chicago, which was, the whole Second City. And I think Josephine Forsberg is the founder of improv, and studied under her direction, I think.
You don't get any more, original source than that.
Yeah. And it was funny too. Like, I loved her advice. She goes, one thing I learned in improv that I brought to corporate America is, like, in improv, they say, don't say the first thing that comes to mind after somebody, prompts you that you're next. Everybody's thinking that. So you have to think about something else. And that she did the same in terms of meetings. She would try to think of not the most, common thing that most people in the meeting are probably thinking about.
Go ahead and think it, because it is the first thing, but then skip over it and go to the, okay, so what's the second thing, Another thing that they'll tell you in improv is to always say yes. They will always say, no matter what the person would suggest, say yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And haven't you known, or I've had bosses like this, where their first impulse is to say no. Now convince me, hey, I got this idea that, no, I don't want to do that. Now tell me why I shouldn't. And that drove me banana crackers. I hated that. Absolutely hated that. So say yes, everybody, and then back off of that later if you need to.
Just really a great portfolio career, bouncing from corporate jobs to having her own training services, to, becoming chief talent officer of a Kansas City company, MRI Global, then going back to her own and Voyage Consulting. She's a culture strategist. She talked about, she was into building great cultures before the word culture was cool. I thought that was fun. But yeah, just an executive coach. She gave me a copy of her book, The Basics of Gen AI, and I just read most of it. And it's it's, again, we talked about like a college textbook, but like almost any book on AI is, outdated the moment it gets published. But hers is a very great guide for it, just very practical, easy to read, and it's tactical. Here's things you can do with it, and here's what she's done. And she has a lot of research in there that she cites and things like that. But I think it's a great starter book if you want to just start using AI and you're not familiar with it at all, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good. It was a great interview. I loved it, and I loved hearing her experience. Loved hearing all those sprint stories. I mean, I know we keep coming back to that, but that was I was there for 20 years, and so you can't be at a company in that culture for 20 years, and all the different things that I did through that without leaving a big impact. And
oh yeah, and it was a training ground for great people. That's when they moved outside of Sprint, created companies and consulting groups. I mean, there's just phenomenal, economic growth based on, former Sprint people and leaders.
And at least half a dozen future guests on the Corporate Couch.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, they were doing something right. So that's great. You asked her a question that you haven't asked in a long time. You used to ask it more often, and now you haven't asked it at all. And that was, give some examples or some characteristics of the worst bosses that you've ever had. And she talked a lot about self-centeredness. That is, bosses that operate for their own benefit instead of the corporation's benefit or the team's benefit or my benefit. And that was apparently a big thing with her. If you would ask me that question, the thing that would pop up into my mind immediately would be the worst characteristic of bad bosses that I've ever had are bosses that are micromanagers. Bosses that would literally stand over your shoulder while you were writing some code or something and tell you to close that parentheses or put a semicolon there or you misspelled this word or something like that. And I've had my share of them, I tell you. And they are miserable to work with. By the same token, the best bosses I've ever had are the bosses that would leave me alone. Give me an assignment or give me an inspiration, or I'd come to them with an inspiration or something like that. And they would say, good, go out and do thus wise.
I literally, after about 35 years into my professional career, I knew this boss was a micromanager. So I started to, swim, with the current, not against it. But I literally wrote a 3-sentence email to the entire company. It was a small company about a change, and I asked her if she wanted to review it. Guess what the answer was?
Oh, she probably had a lot of opinions on it, right?
Well, yeah, she wanted to review it.
Yeah,
that's whatever. And I don't think she changed anything. I'm not sure, but it was interesting.
At least she wanted to have her fingers in it. Right? There was something that she just couldn't let go of it. I thought that was interesting. Anyway, the whole experience with Kelly was wonderful. I really enjoyed the interview.
Yeah, she's tremendous. And so insightful, like I said, and she's so caring. I mean, she has this just caring spirit and great heart.
And she makes chocolate chip cookies at 2 a.m. and takes them to her team.
Yeah, she gave her to her creative team. They're working on a pitch late at night. She lived in an apartment, a block or two from the office, and made chocolate chip cookies at 2 a.m.
Isn't that great?
You gotta love her. Gotta love her. Joe, what's going on in your life right now?
I tell you what's going on in my life. I got mugged last night.
What?
Yes, I got mugged by 6 dwarves. Not happy.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Corporate Couch. If you enjoy the podcast, I would love for you to take 2 minutes out of your day to rate us 5 stars and write a review. Please join me next week to learn from another great leader sharing their professional journey and insights.